Let's get started. So let's talk about Michael Cohen. Um, for those of you who are not familiar with Michael Cohen, he used to be a lawyer, basically a fixer for Trump, right? He always came across to me as just some low rent, wannabe kind of, like Roy Cohn esque type character. Like he wanted to be a mafia lawyer, but he wasn't really that good or that ruthless. So he kind of never really made it. So he ended up just kind of working for the Trump family as one of these guys. It wouldn't surprise me if he was like the chauffeur, the dishwasher, the personal valet, and the lawyer all rolled into one. You know, basically, he was the guy that was there, and his job, the way I understand it, is to take heat for Trump. That's it. He was the guy that was supposed to fall on the sword. Well, and he never really, he kind of did. But not like the Trump's company, his chief financial officer, his accountant fell on his sword for Trump. Michael Cohen never really did. And I'll kind of get to why we kind of bought into Cohen's shtick because it was to appeal to our side and hit like his story. Okay. Hey, what's going on, Dana? Dana Dubois in the house from the Daily Whatever show. You know, love to see her always pop in. But there was all like, and he got put on before Midas Touch really blew up. And like he had a show called Mea Culpa, and another one. And I tuned into him a couple times. And I remember one time I tuned in that kind of just just killed me about Cohen, like kind of killed anything, was he was talking to somebody on an interview and he was talking about Trump's scam for his first election, right? The first time Trump was running. And this kind of goes to, hey, what's going on, Kat and Laura and all the folks jumping in. Um, but this goes to Trump's first election. Now, again, it lends credibility to that Trump never really wanted to win the first election, that he just kind of got thrown into it. And then being president, just appealed to his narcissistic, malignant narcissism and ego. And Cohen basically said, "Yeah, we ran the first campaign, got got the nomination, and we were just going to run it as a scam where you just collect a bunch of donations, don't spend much money, and then when you lose, you get to keep all the money from the election campaign, and then you're just kind of a fixture in right wing politics." And he got this little grin on his face, and the person he was talking to was kind of shocked by it. And he's just like, "Well, it's kind of brilliant, right?" And I think that was his retort. It was like, "Well, it's kind of brilliant when you think about it." That right there tells you everything you need to know about Michael Cohen. Because the thing that didn't really get asked to him enough was, at some point, you loved partaking in this criminal activity. You loved this stuff, right? There wasn't really a if like there wasn't a show of remorse. There wasn't a show of like, "Yeah, man, I'm not proud to admit this, but this is uh this is how we were." Because when I reflect on stuff that I did in my past that I was as a young man, wasn't nearly as like we're talking that level, but just how I used to treat women or how I used to be, it's like there's nothing that really that I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is so awesome." No, it was pretty awful, and I was an asshole. You know, and that right there sort of signaled to me that like, man, I don't want to listen to this guy. But why did a lot of people want to listen to him? Why did he build an audience? Well, a big part of that is on our side of the fence is we love a good redemption story. We love people growing and learning and changing. And also, he would go after Trump really viciously. And for a lot of folks, myself included, when there wasn't really any good news coming out, part of the thing we like to listen, like that kind of, it was the Trump's an asshole. He's a this, he's a that, he's a horrible person. And it gave us all validation, right? That what we were feeling was correct. Now, maybe at that time, he really felt that. I'm sure he did with some of the things that Trump did to him. And he was kicked out of the circle. And now he was having to do these things in order to make a living and, trying to sell a book and do everything else. And like, I don't begrudge the man doing that. But that's why Michael Cohen was so appealing to us. Those kinds of stories they don't really sell too much on the right side of the fence. Yeah, you've got like these, I used to be a liberal and now I'm right wing. They don't really sell. What those folks like are the power stories, right? That's their psychology. They like people like Charlie Kirk and Trump and Nick Fuentes who say all the taboo things, all the visceral hatred, all the cruelty, and don't pay any consequences for it. That's what they like. It's a power trip, right? For us, it's redemption and it's more of we like those stories. It's those people who grow and change and learn, right? To try to better themselves and better the world around them. You know, does that make us better people? I mean, yeah. Yeah, it does. But the thing about it is like the other thing I never really liked about Cohen was he's always and this is and somebody just pointed out this is like Lev Parnas. Yeah, but here's the difference, right? And this is where the difference you have with say Lev Parnas or Joe Walsh and Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen to me always felt like he was playing a role. Like he never really stopped playing this role of this New York tough guy, you know, that it's like, oh, well, I used to go, I used to be Trump's guy. Now I'm your guy. That kind of bada bing kind of crap that resonates with a certain crowd in New York and the rest of America, this like sort of mafioso tough guy. And I absolutely had irrational reasons for not liking this dude, right? Which was like one was I couldn't stand his accent. I always felt it was like kind of New York, but just dialed up a little bit for effect. And I didn't like his face. Now again, those are irrational reasons for disliking a guy, right? Had I met him in person and maybe like, we'd work together and he was doing good work, that would be one of those moments that I had to kind of come around and say, man, Fred, you got to just let that go, man. That's on you. That's an irrational reason to not like somebody. And this irrationality thing that I'm talking about is going to be very, very important, right? Because a lot of the things we like and a lot of the things we grab onto are based on our own very irrational reasons, feelings, passions, traumas. It's why we like certain politicians. It's why we like, over the others, right? Like why two people can say the same thing appealing to us. And we like one over the other. Same thing, but we like this over that. It's just part of human psychology. But the other thing is there was just something that he never he never really seemingly went out on a limb and took risks. He never there was like, yeah, slamming Trump and all that stuff was fine, but he never he never seemed to have like a deep grasp on issues. He never seemed to say, I was over here and I was working with the rich and powerful. And now that I'm over here and I've gone through what this, I'm advocating for this position. I'm advocating for this position. This is where I've evolved and this is where I've changed. He never did that. It was always just anti-Trump, anti-Trump, Trump sucks, anti-Trump. You know, like where like others like Joe Walsh or Lev Parnas have kind of come, they've moved a little bit or they refined some of their previous stances. Like Joe Walsh, I'm not a fan of some of his politics, you know, probably a lot of his politics and probably a lot of things we disagree on, but we can agree on the Constitution. We can agree on those things that, and I can have a conversation with Joe. We can have a debate. Lev Parnas has shown it's like, yeah, man, I did this, and I'm like, I was like, I never saw glee from him or taking pride in like, yeah, I used to be a piece of crap, and look what I did back then. I got caught, and well, oopsie, I'm on your side now. I've never gotten that impression from Lev, and part of that is important because there are some things that your intuition, you know, there are some things that your intuition will pick up. And then, but really what it comes down to is actions. It comes down to actions. Do they continuously keep doing those actions? You know, so that's why we bought into this shtick with Michael Cohen. There was a ready-made story for us that we desperately wanted to see. And we saw it with Michael Cohen. And that's why we grabbed on to him and pulled him on our side. Now, I'll just say, look, if you're taken in by this guy, it's and that's why I'm saying this. It's understandable. It, you know, part of social media, and as someone who's worked on building bigger creators platforms and helping them scale and even on my own, I understand sort of like kind of what works, kind of what doesn't. One of the things that's really been sort of freeing for me was when I went independent, now I could just speak my mind. Whereas before, there were certain things I didn't say or I held back or I soft sold because, well, I don't want to hurt the Democratic Party. I don't want to say this and then have other people get depressed or turned out and blah, blah, blah. And it's like I've since changed my thinking on that because my goal's always been authenticity. It's always been to try to say something that like, hey man, like how can I use some of what I know to help people kind of navigate through this moment? Right. And you can see that in other creators that try to do the same thing. I never got that impression from Michael Cohen. I didn't. It was pretty clear his shtick was, you know, like it was pretty clear his shtick was, I'm just going to sell a book and I'm going to bash Trump and I'm going to jump on this rabid Trump hate train until it runs out. Because again, it worked for a little while. But why now? Why suddenly now? And why Michael Cohen? There's a lot to unpack there. And there's a lot of people that have had dealings with him or, that probably maybe could guess better than I can. But it's absolutely about the Epstein files. That's it. Is as Sandra pointed out, he's absolutely serving himself. But the question is like, why would Trump let him come back? Trump's not known to be this very forgiving person that of people that have crossed him. That's not in his nature. In their like wannabe tough guy, mafioso sort of culture, right? He's not that guy. But what we are seeing with Trump right now is that he is throwing everything he possibly can at us to try to distract from the fact that the Epstein files have taken on a life of their own. That there are people out there, folks that I actually know, like Ellie Leonard, who's doing great work in going through these things. people that are not do not work for corporate media or some big outlet that are just doing it because they feel a sense that they need to. And Trump is desperate for that to go away. So, what makes a better sort of what for the moment makes a better distraction than Michael Cohen suddenly coming out and saying, "Well, I was coerced by Alvin Bragg and Letitia James, New York AG, and Alvin Bragg, who's the district attorney of Manhattan." Hmm. Because again, if you follow the trial at all, there was a question of whether people would believe Michael Cohen. They actually wanted to put his name is escaping. I think it's something Burger or whatever. Like his CFO, they wanted to get him on the stand, but they thought he'd lie under oath. And the problem with Cohen was, you put him on, he's obvious he has credibility issues. He clearly had an axe to grind against Trump. He'd been on social media for years bashing him, right? So if there's anything, it was probably the other way around. Alan Weisselberger, thank you. That's who the prosecution really wanted to put on, was Alan Weisselberger, because he knew where the bodies were buried. But Michael Cohen was who they had. So they put him on. And again, it wasn't a coercion. I guarantee you he was begging to talk. Even if he got a plea deal or immunity or whatever he got. It's like, Trump screwed him. All right, cool. I'm going to screw you. And so it kind of makes sense in Trump sort of logic. Oh, well, if I get him to flip back to me, then, people are going to be like, I don't know what the truth is anymore. But there was one thing that Michael Cohen said that I actually quote whenever I talk about Trump, because this is the guy that spent the most time with him. And even though these people are liars, they tell the truth every once in a while. And that's this. Michael Cohen said Trump doesn't think past 5 minutes. Somebody was asking him one time, about all these three-dimensional chess and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And he said, Trump is a guy who doesn't think past 5 minutes. And that's what this is. I guarantee you, Michael Cohen he either got pressured or there was a sweetheart deal. He'll actually say, I guarantee you, down the road a piece, when this all blows up, we're going to hear from not just him, but a lot of other people that say, oh, I was pressured. They threatened my family. Oh, I had to do it. I'm really sorry. Feel sorry for me again. That's coming. Because here's the sad part about all this, right? The reason that this won't have the effect that Trump thinks it will is because there was one witness in that trial that we should have believed all along, and that was Stormy Daniels. But we didn't. And that's our problem as a culture. We should have just believed her, just like the Epstein victims. The fact that we have to have these files, like it's written in writing and all this other stuff, in order to believe women that are still alive and still telling their story or trying to tell their story, and they're all the same. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. But whatever price Michael Cohen decided to pay to sacrifice his credibility, whatever little he got back, whatever, I don't know what that is, right? You know, it could if I had to guess, he probably got again, I'm alleging, I don't know. I'm just guessing here, you know. Though I would love it if Michael Cohen tried to sue me. That'd be great. I would be the most combative person at trial. You would see me day after day defending myself, showing up with a smile, be like, "Bro, just I take me for whatever you think I have. Good luck." But if I had to guess, he's either in the Epstein files, because again, he likened himself to Trump's fixer, and that's what he did for Stormy Daniels. So it follows reason or reasonability that he did it for the Epstein victims of Trump. He either intimidated witnesses or he tried to silence them with bribes, you name it. He probably knows where some of the bodies are buried. And that's why, if he does, he's a POS. If he did fix the Katie Johnson case, yeah. Because again, the reason you're seeing this freak out and the reason you're seeing Trump world come back to him when you absolutely know Trump hates the fact that he has to do it, but Trump also wants to keep that from coming to the light of day more than the fact that he probably hates Michael Cohen now. There must be something just horrible in those files because this cover up is insane. But you're going to get that kind of thing in this world and social media and online stuff. A lot of this stuff is personality driven, right? That's just kind of how it is. There's probably a lot of folks that listen to me or read what I write because, they like my story or they like something about me. And that's fine. Like, that's just how we are as human beings. I'd rather go get what I think over here than versus over there, and that's fine. But once these people reveal themselves for who they are, accept it and believe them. That's it. And don't let them come back and, do the same thing again. That's all. But yeah, I feel bad for the people that got taken in by this, you know. And if you were and you're listening to this, it wasn't because you were stupid, you know. Predators prey on people. Doesn't mean that you're yeah, grifters are gonna grift, to Saunders' point. It's what happens. We all get took. I've been took. Everybody has, you know. It's yeah. And these narratives and these stories and all this other stuff, like, they fit because it's powerful for us. It's things we wanna believe in. And there are times that it works. Like, there are people on this platform that were once, over there, and then now they're over here, and some of them are, like, there's varying degrees of movement. So, yeah. But if I had to guess, I don't think Michael Cohen ever changed, you know? They're right about one thing, he's a rat. And I'm not talking about, like, a criminal who flips on the organization rat, like he was that. Um, what I'm talking about is you can look this up, there was a Rolling Stone interview with John McCain years and years ago. One of the best, if you ever wanna go back and read a piece of history, it's by far one of the best Rolling Stone articles I've ever read for sort of an in-depth look at someone. And John McCain quoted, he said when they asked him what his favorite animal was, and he said, "The rat." because the rat will do anything it needs to do to survive. It's an actual quote. That's Michael Cohen. He's a rat. He's not a tough guy. He's not a principled man. He's not gonna take a hit for ethics. None of that. He's a rat. He will do anything he needs to do to survive. That's it. So, yeah, that's what I got to say about. That's what I got to say about Michael Cohen. You know, on a Sunday afternoon. Anyway, I appreciate y'all tuning in, but I just wanted to put some more thumb on the scale. Hopefully, we can run that guy off the platform. You know, at least get him off my side of the fence or our side of the fence. Get him off our side. Go over there and play around with all the bigots and the fascists. Leave us alone. Nobody wants to buy what you're selling anymore, bro. Anyway, that's all I got for you. And as always, keep the faith, defend democracy, and I'll see you later. It did, man. Nice.